For this lecture, we want to continue with film noir again, and I introduced that. We were talking about gangsters, and we want to talk about some of the specific issues that it talks about, because it's definitely going to fit in with the detective films that we watch for this half of the class. So noir lasted roughly from 1940 to 1959. After that, there's a notable shift into what we'll talk about later, which is called neo-noir. So this period coincided with World War II. And also the Cold War, and we went directly from World War II, which ended in 1945, to the Cold War, which then lasted until, the Cold War lasted all the way up until the 1980s, but noir fit in with that for only part of that. And also we have McCarthyism, which, for those of you that have heard any history or have taken any history courses, Joseph McCarthy was a senator that started going after people in Hollywood and in other phases of society and accusing them of being communists, and this was an element of the Cold War, a fear of communism in general. So all this put together created what a lot of people refer to as the age of anxiety, and this anxiety is what definitely fits into the film noir films. So some of the social problems that these films deal with, reintegration of soldiers, and this is a problem that we deal with today as well. Once you train a soldier to fight, what's going to happen when they re-enter society? It ends up creating people that sometimes have a little bit of trouble adjusting. We see a lot of these characters in film noir films. Also, women's roles in society. Women were expected to work during World War II because all the men were off fighting, and then when the men came back, the men wanted their jobs back. The women were supposed to go back home and do the traditional female roles, but they didn't necessarily like that. And also the men kind of wondered what the women were doing while they were away. Also communism, as I mentioned, and also the atomic bomb, this idea that once we dropped an atomic bomb, or two of them to be exact, on somebody, nothing is really the same afterwards. One thing that's important to note about film noir films, because they fit within the same era as the Hollywood Production Code, which, as we've seen, kind of put a big clamp down on what films could do with regards to violence and certain types of content, film noir films were kind of they managed to escape that in a lot of respects. We see more sympathetic portrayal of criminals and slightly racier issues being dealt with. And that's because these were referred to as B features, which didn't get the scrutiny that the A-list ones did. These were films that were basically crammed down the theater's throats. Like, okay, if you want white heat, you got to take 3 B features along with it, and that's the only way you're going to be able to show it. And so they said, all right, whatever. And these B features, probably just got rubber stamped as opposed to getting the scrutiny of the Production Code Administration. And a lot of times there was a definite critique on society at this particular point in time. So the left liberal critique of an increasingly right-wing society, which is what ended up producing a phenomenon like McCarthyism, in which a lot of people were, truly afraid of being outed as communists, even though they weren't, and this, right-wing society during Cold War. Some of the characters you're going to see in film noir films are, private eye or private detective, and we already saw one in Asphalt Jungle, the character of Dick Branham, who was really kind of a shady character and ended up causing some serious problems. We'll see that private detectives tend to do that sometimes. Also the femme fatale, or the dangerous female, and the male version of that, which is the homme fatale. The girl next door, who's kind of the antidote to the femme fatale. And a lot of times our main characters, they should listen to the girl next door, but they listen to the femme fatale instead. And of course the victim, which usually kickstarts everything. So we want to talk about the private eye in particular for this, and focus on this particular character. And the Maltese Falcon has a good example of that with Sam Spade, a Dashiell Hammett character, in this case played by Humphrey Bogart, who played the same Spade a couple of times. Also there was Philip Marlowe, who, let's see, that wasn't Dashiell Hammett, that was one of the other guys. I can't remember right now. I'll probably throw that into another lecture later. So we have this character. He's sarcastic. He works for himself, so he's self-serving, and He's intelligent, he's tough, and in most cases his clients are going to be either criminals or they're going to be borderline criminals. So he has to use these skills that he has to get the better of them, because he's trying to get paid, he's trying to get everything done the right way, but he's trying to fight off his own clients as well as the policemen as well. So he's trying not to get locked up because he's working for criminals. And it ends up creating a character who's definitely straddling the law in a lot of respects. And this is very typical of a film noir private eye. This film's from the beginning of the film noir cycle, so very early on. The cycle went from 1940 to 1959, so 1941. And it's a pretty talky. You can definitely tell it came from a book, because there's a lot of talking in this and a lot of dialogue, not a whole lot of action in it, but you're only going to be watching clips if that's all that you watch, so you won't necessarily notice that. For those of you that watch the entire film, you'll realize that there's a lot of talking in this film. And the film often is going to hinge on the dialogue, so you have to pay really, really careful attention to that.